Welcome back to another tier list video for High-ELO, and this time we're going over patch 12.18 and how it looks a week after the changes. This is officially the patch that the World Championships will be played on, and I for one am super excited to watch it this year. So just before we do get into the video, don't forget that if you do go to our website you can see both the low and high elo tier lists in full for yourself. There you can also see builds and guides for every single champion included, so don't miss out. Now as always we're going to kick it off with the top lane, and in the god tier we have Shen. In the S tier we have Singed, Poppy, Aatrox, Sejuani, Mordekaiser, Darius and of course Olaf. Maokai and Garen move down from S to A, Udyr, Kled and Lilia move from A to B, and Tryndamere, Trundle, Shyvana and Gragas all fall down into the C tier. Poppy moves back into the S tier though, and Renekton reappears into that B tier. So Maokai was actually really strong in that top lane, well, and the support in the jungle too, but mostly so in the top lane after the changes that came in patch 12.17. However, in patch 12.18 though, he did receive some nerfs, and this has seen his win rate in the top lane go down a bit by around 1%. But if you are a Maokai top enjoyer, don't worry too much as he's still in a good spot in the A tier. Maokai has a lot of sustain, he's really hard to kill because he's actually so much tankier than you think. He sets up ganks and fights really well with that W point and click CC and of course his Q afterwards. And then you've also got that ultimate which is even better at setting up ganks or just roaming and setting up plays. Maokai top is pretty basic, he's pretty easy to pick up, which means he's obviously going to be pretty good in low elo too. But he just has really good impact throughout games with the amount of crowd control, sustain and tankiness that he actually brings to the table. So if you are having fun playing Maokai this patch in that top lane, then just keep playing it. Udyr unfortunately did fall down pretty heavily after these changes though. His rework made him a bit broken in that top lane, but actually he got nerfed so hard his win rate has fallen nearly 5% in the top lane. It was a little bit too much last patch. I mean, he was literally unkillable and he killed everyone that came towards him just with one ability, his R. He's just no way near as good as he was. I mean, he's still going to be in that B tier, so he is playable, but he's just nowhere near as strong and nowhere near as broken. He is seeing a bit better results in the jungle though, so maybe if you do enjoy this champion, consider playing him there for the time being. Although I do think he is going to get some compensation buffs next week. So speaking of the jungle, let's move there now. And in the god tier we have Fiddlesticks and Master Yi. In the S tier we have Bel'Veth, Rek'Sai, Amumu, Rammus, Volibear, Zac and Mordekaiser. Kayn, Hecarim and Udyr all moved down a tier following on from their nerfs, and Trundle and Shaco also moved down from A to B. Lee Sin and Maokai move up into the B tier, Vi, Skarner and Sejuani move from B to A, and Mordekaiser and Zac return up to that S tier. Lee Sin's stats have been a bit depressing recently, so it's really nice to see some buffs coming in. I for one play a hell of a lot of this champion, so I am more than happy with these buffs. The thing is, Lee Sin is never going to be the best champion in the game in low elo because he is really hard to play and he does take a lot of practice. Like, you could just play someone else that's a lot easier and be far more impactful on for much less risk. But if you do know how to play him properly and you know what you're doing when it comes to those insects and teamfights and snowballing the early game, he's still viable. And his buffs this week have actually made his win rate increase by around 2%, which is pretty impressive for a champion that was really struggling. It just would not be a World Championships without seeing all of those high quality Lee Sins at play. So it was fairly expected we might see this at some point. Nocturne got a little bit of a nerf last patch and it hasn't really made too much difference. It has knocked it down very slightly, but this champion is still in a really good spot at the moment. Now, especially so in low elo, people just don't respect this champion and don't really know how to play against it in the jungle. He gets level 6 and he ganks you, he waits for you to flash and he just ganks you again. Before you know it, Nocturne is 10-0, he's secured 3 dragons and he's got his ultimate on such a short cooldown that every time he sees you, you're probably going to die. Now whether you go for the squishy glass cannon assassin build or you go for stride breaker and a bit more bruisery, either way Nocturne is a fantastic pick, especially in solo queue where you can just snowball your way to victory so much easier. So despite the nerfs, if you do enjoy him, keep playing him because they really didn't make too much difference. On the other hand though, Hecarim got some nerfs and these made a massive impact. Now we all know just how broken Hecarim can be when he's been buffed, and that was the case massively so in patch 12.17. However, last week in patch 12.18 they nerfed him again and it really did hurt him. His win rate saw a decrease of around 2.5%, which just shows alone how much it has made a difference. Now Hecarim is still more than viable, he's still really good in the right hands, especially if you get that early few kills and you can get that Mirror Mana nice and early on, you're still going to be able to carry games with him. But this patch he's definitely not someone you can just blind pick and win every single game like you could last week. Kayn is another dominant jungler that got some nerfs recently, but he's actually been so much stronger than Hecarim for such a long time. Hecarim had 1 patch whereas Kayn had about 12, and I don't think anyone in solo queue is going to be disappointed with him getting some nerfs. Well, unfortunately for you players who absolutely despise this champion, and I'm sure there is a lot of you, his win rate did only go down by around 1%. But it definitely has made him a little bit less oppressive and a little bit less auto win, especially in those low elo games where he gets his form early, he gets that Gore Drinker and Death Dance, and he just becomes a bit immortal. Kayn is still being played a hell of a lot though, so don't expect him to go anywhere anytime soon, but he is definitely a little bit weaker, which should help you out when you're looking to climb. In patch 12.18 there definitely doesn't feel like you need to ban about 14 champions to actually be able to play the game like it did last week, so there's that at least. Now let's move it into the mid lane now, and there weren't any major changes this patch, so there's not too much to speak about here. Swain is going to keep his place in the god tier for now, and in the S tier we have Vex, Diana, Zed, Vladimir, Akshan and Victor. Yes, Victor moves back into the S tier, and Lux is also going to move up from B to A. Swain just can't stop winning games at the moment. He's probably one of the best blind pickable mid laners to go for at all ranks. He has a hell of a lot of cozy matchups, he gets really fed really easily, and when he does get fed, you just simply can't kill him. He's very tanky for a mage, but he also deals a huge amount of AoE damage, and healing of course. Now Swain actually has pretty much 4 roles covered in the game at the moment, but he definitely sees the best results in the mid lane. With Swain's build options, you've got Liandry's, Ryla's Crystal Scepter, Zhonya's Hourglass, Demonic Embrace, and once you've got this collection of items, you are so tanky. But due to all that health you've built, that Demonic Embrace really starts burning. If you manage to get stuck into a 5-man team with your ultimate up with these items, with the Zhonya's ready, you're going to do a lot of damage, let's be honest. Another mid laner that's also doing really well but nowhere near as popular as Swain, and it's actually Heimerdinger. Now this guy is actually probably one of the most underrated champions in the game at the moment. His win rate is absolutely absurd. So if you do enjoy the Donga, it's definitely the time to revisit him. Heimerdinger just has so much potential in lane. He's a real bully, he's really good against melee matchups, but he also has so much shoving potential as well, so he takes down turrets and plates so easily. You pretty much can't get ganked if you're against 2 melee champions either, because you just set up your turrets, you get a stopwatch, you turn it around, you take down both of them at the same time. And before you know it, it's 25 minutes in the game and you're soloing Baron. And guess what, you don't even need to go in the pit. You throw your towers over the wall, you press your ultimate, and watch as Baron absolutely melts. The amount of damage you can rack up in a game on Heimerdinger at the moment with Liandry's, with a bit of damage, with a few items, is going to be better than anyone else you can see. So now is the best time to play this champion if you haven't tried him yet. Let's move down to that bottom lane then and take a look at those AD carries. In the gold tier, we still have Misfortune despite those recent nerfs. In the S tier, we have Jhin, Twitch, Seraphine, and Tristana. Kalista, Zeri, and Veigar all move down from B to C. Draven moves down from A to B, and Kai'Sa and Sivir move back up into the A tier. Yes, Misfortune is still a bit too strong at the moment. Now, although she doesn't have a 54% win rate like she did before, she still has around a 52.5% one, which is still better than every other AD carry in the game. Ever since they introduced those crit changes to her ultimate, now you can actually build her like a traditional AD carry, so you're not just reliant on one ability. You now have auto attacks, you now actually deal damage with your Q rather than just being an E and R bot. And the thing is, you still deal a huge amount of damage with that ultimate anyway. Probably more so than you did before. Misfortune is probably the best team fighting AD carry in the game at the moment. I mean, maybe not with positioning and kiting, but with just sheer damage output and burst. But it's not like you're weak in lane either. You're one of the best lane bullies in the game. Your double up deals a lot of damage, your auto attacks you can farm so easily with your love tap passive, and of course you've got your E to slow people and line up your ultimate. Now Misfortune can be played with pretty much any support at the moment, which is really beneficial because there's so many variety of supports being played. Whether it's an enchanter, a peeling support like a Janna, or an engaging support like a Nautilus. You have pretty much playstyles to fit any of these guys. Now Misfortune's ban rate is still pretty high, even though she has been nerfed, but to be honest, if you do see her open, she's probably the freest ELO AD carry you can go for at the moment. So if you are just looking for that AD carry to blast your way to easy wins, then pick her up again. Ashe got some minor buffs last patch and they haven't made too much of a difference, but they have helped out a little bit. Ashe's win rate is sitting around the 50 to 51% win rate mark at the moment, which is not too bad really. She's definitely by no means broken, but she's definitely not weak either. I'd say Ashe is one of those AD carries that does need the right game. Like if she's against load of hard engage, load of dive, load of assassin, she's always going to struggle because she's basically relying on her ultimate, and if she misses it, she's dead. But if you do get an enchanter or a peeling support in your pocket like a Soraka or a Thresh who can really help keep you alive, then you can honestly kite to your heart's content. If you go against the comp which Ashe works against with lots of champions which don't have too much mobility that you can actually keep on the move, keep slowing them, keep kiting, then you can probably win a lot of games if you're good enough on her. But that's only if you're really good at her. The good thing is with Ashe, she's really easy to play on a basic level too. You got your W to poke in lane, you can set up ganks and fights with your ultimate, so even if you are behind, you're still going to be useful. Now, I wouldn't recommend first picking Ashe every game, but if you do enjoy her and you think the game allows it, then definitely you should play her right now. Last up we have Kalista to talk about, and let's be honest, she's just not good enough at the moment. She's not good enough in general, but especially so at low elo. Her win rate is around 47% at the moment, which just shows that she's not really worth the time unless you can really stomp the early game if you are good enough on her. Kalista needs both the perfect support to play with and the perfect matchup to play against, and even then, she's got to stomp them so hard that she can walk around and one-shot everyone, kiting her way around the map. If these perfect circumstances don't exist, you're going to be pretty useless. So if you are a Kalista main, you're probably already high elo because if you're good enough, you'll climb with her, but if not, she's just not worth it. Finishing off with those supports then, and in the god tier, surprise surprise, we just have Janna. In the S tier though, we have Soraka, Zilean, Renata Glask, Amumu, Zyra and Nami. Nami moves up into the S tier after she's really started to perform better again over the last few weeks. Thresh also moves up into the A tier and Lulu and Sona moved down from S tier A. Pyke and Bard also moved down a tier from A to B. Thresh has been buffed again because it's the Worlds patch and Riot just loves seeing this champion in competitive play. But for all you Thresh one-tricks and Thresh fanatics out there, this is fantastic news, because Thresh finally feels in a place where he actually can be viable again. For the first time in absolutely ages, Thresh finally has an above a 50% win rate, which is absolutely music to the ears of those Thresh fans. Thresh is by no means broken, but you're not going to be trolling by actually picking one of the most fun supports in the game anymore. Thresh is one of those champions with a very high skill ceiling, and if you are good enough, you're simply just not going to be impactful compared to the likes of those other easier champions like Janna, Sona and so on. With Thresh, you have to keep landing those hooks consistently, you've got to be perfect with those flays, you've got to line up big ults with your box and team fights, and as long as you can do these on a regular basis, you're going to have a lot of success with Thresh this patch. Again, like most champions in the game at the moment, you are going to have to be a little bit careful of what you're picking it into. But if the game seems right, you've got a good matchup, you've got the right AD carry by your side, Thresh is back in a fantastic spot again. So if you enjoy him, now's the time to pick him up again. So Lulu got nerfed this patch and it has made a little bit of a difference. Now it's not made her useless because Lulu will always be good in the right games because of the nature of her kit and her playstyle. But she is below 50% in the majority of ranks at the moment, which is the lowest it's been for a while now. Lulu has kind of returned to a bit more of a situational support at the moment. She's absolutely nothing compared to the likes of Janna, but she's still fantastic in those games when you've got a Twitch or a Cogmore by your side. Now if you do have the right AD carry alongside you, you have the right team comp, you've got the right champions around you, and you're against champions that polymorph will really come in handy, then Lulu will still be a fantastic choice. But she's just no way near as OP as those other champions you can pick in every single game at the moment. Now we are keeping Lulu in the A tier despite a bit of an unimpressive win rate because this champion will always be good in the right games. So don't worry if you do main Lulu because she'll always be viable, as long as I don't gut her anymore. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our updated tier list video for low elo in patch 12.18. Thanks everyone for watching and we'll see you all in the next video. Take care.